Well, welcome everybody and good morning. Happy Friday. We are excited to have our final conversation for change. Let's listen. And we are very excited for the next hour and the great stories that we are going to be hearing, calls for change. Today, I would like to introduce my co-host, in addition to Courtney, Ayana again. And Ayana is returning this year. She is 10 years old and is going to be our future president. She has nominated herself to be the class executive, and then she is also an advocate for anti-bullying. Ayana, thank you so much for coming back this week. How do you feel about being a returning guest or
Very
co-host?
excited.
Great. Oh, good. We're very glad to have you here. So thank you so much. For those that weren't tuning in last week, do you want to just kind of speak about the beauty of your skin and who you are as a person?
I'm I like my skin because it is different, and you should too. All skin colors are the same, just different. Like some of are tan, some are white, some are black, some have freckles. It doesn't matter. You're still beautiful just the way you are.
Well, you are very beautiful. I think I said this last week. You're beautiful on the inside and the outside. Ayana, do you want to introduce our first speaker, Javar?
Mhm. First up, we have Javar. Javar has worked with mixed staffing in the past and has grown into a supervisor in his new role. A supervisor sorry, leads a supervise leads and supervises their team to be the best they can be. Thank you for being here today, Javar.
All right, we're gonna get you unmuted there, Javar, if you want to unmute your microphone.
Javar, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's the microphone.
There we go. Oh, shoot. I think I just muted you. Do it again. Sorry.
Hello, guys. I'm Javar. I'm a supervisor currently at the Gluten Free Bar second shift. I was released from prison in 2017. Went through mixed staffing and got the job where I'm at now. I've been dealing with mixed staffing for the last 3 years with hiring people with felons on second shift. But I'm here to talk today about housing for felons. It is very hard for us when we get out of prison to find housing. With that being said, I'm going to leave the conversation open.
Javar, do you want to tell a little bit about your story of what it was like for you when you came out of the system? And I guess, like, maybe just some experiences on how housing has impacted you?
Housing, when I first got out of prison, everybody shut their door. I mean, there's no really, unless you find a private landlord, and then you have to tell the private landlord your story. Otherwise, he doesn't rent to you, and then you have to find a private landlord that's actually willing to rent to you. And 90% of the people that's out there are not willing to rent to felons. So it's like either you stay downtown at the mission or you end up going back to prison because you can't find any place to live, or you end up trying to live with a family member. I mean, it's really, really hard.
Is that what you had to do so you were released in 2017?
Yes,
And then you had got out of the prison system and you went to a federal halfway house, correct?
correct,
And then they're supposed to help you get housing and get returned to society, correct?
correct. And there's even being in federal halfway house and all the support that you got from the probation officers, the staff that works there, and things like that. People still do not want to rent to felons.
So what is it that people like, why do you think that is? What is the reasoning and what are things that we can do to try to help because so the top three things that you need to not end up back in the prison system would be safe housing, employment, and then food and food, I think.
Right.
So if the first thing is housing, and you're not able to get that, can you talk to us a little bit about what your suggestions would be for that?
My suggestions would be for that. Really, there's no suggestions for that because it's hard. I mean, like I said, you have to go stay with a family member. I mean, yeah, it's difficult to talk about. I mean, because I went through a difficult time trying to find housing.
Why do you think that you didn't end up back in the system and maybe other people do?
Um, I had supportive family.
Uh-huh.
I had supportive family. I lived with my sister when I first got out for a year. I mean, it took me what 19 months to find a house, and I had to explain to the lady what I went to prison for. Had to introduce her to my probation officer and let her know that what I went to prison for, I'm not doing anymore. And I'm still walking on pins and needles with that.
Do you feel that you constantly are having to kind of the um, pay for one mistake you made now it's
Definitely,
14 years ago?
definitely.
What do you think employers or leaders can do in our community to try to help advocate for individuals like yourself rather than continue to put up barriers?
Listen, listen. We, I mean, the company I work for, um, is a second chance company. I got out of prison. These guys knew I was a felon. They gave me a chance. I talked with these guys. I explained my story. They paid for me to go to school. I
Hmm.
became a supervisor. They took a chance.
I would definitely say that the way that the gluten-free bar values people and allows for opportunities is something that many employers in the area should look to, um, as a prime example of how people deserve to be treated. Would you agree?
Definitely, definitely.
Javar, do you think that in terms of you made a mistake at a young age, do you feel you're going to continue to have to pay for that crime? And
No,
good,
no, I don't.
good. So eventually we're going to get through this, right?
We definitely are.
Do you feel, in terms of your conviction, and you being Black, that anything, had you been a white person, that you would have been treated any differently?
Definitely. Housing would have been a little bit better. I mean, I wouldn't have had to explain what I went to prison for. I wouldn't, I mean, yeah, I definitely could have got a house easier.
Hmm.
But with me being Black and fresh out of prison and then my crime, they automatically think I'm going right back to doing what I was doing.
Mm. Well, Javar, we're proud to know you and we're proud of how much you've accomplished. I know that they're really proud to have you over at the Gluten Free Bar as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I know
Thanks
it's
for having me.
not an easy thing to continue to bring up. So thank you. Um, it looks like there's one question that came through, Javar, about well, I guess you sort of did, in terms of if the criminal justice system had failed you.
Elaborate a little bit more. What do you mean?
Well, it just says if you feel like the criminal justice, like if they didn't set you up to succeed once you were released.
Oh, they definitely don't set you up to succeed when you're released. I mean, used to be a lot of programs in prisons before school and things like that. Now there's no schooling and things. I mean, it's some job trades that's in there, but the job trades that's in there, and then you come out here and you try to get them type of jobs, people slam the door in your face. 90% of the people who get out of prison end up working in fast food restaurants, aren't able to pay for anything for real.
Mm. Javar, Celeste has asked, I've heard that other employers say that they may consider somebody who has one felony, but not multiple felonies, because there's a perception that a person hasn't learned their lesson and they haven't changed their ways. Would you agree or disagree with this?
I disagree.
And why?
The reason why is a lot of the stuff that we were raised around, the neighborhoods and things like that. People always say, "Oh no, your neighborhood is what you make it," and it's not all that bad. But I mean, if I get out of prison with my first felony and I can't get a job, and I end up doing something I don't have any business doing and catching another felony, I mean, it's just a cycle.
Mm. So a
And
lot of it's psychological, like
right.
psychological. Yeah,
It's
interesting.
easy from that first felony, that second felony. I mean, it could be just jaywalking, and it can turn into something totally different because of the first felony.
Mm.
And then it's like, as soon as they run your name, you're automatically guilty of the felony, and it's like, wow.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for talking again and for sharing your vulnerability. We really appreciate that, Javar, and your
Thanks
insight.
for
You know, if we can do anything, I know housing and homelessness among people who have been in the prison system is absolutely insane. And then you look at the statistic of military veterans that also have prison and felonies that become homeless. It is very sad data. So thank you. Ayana, would you like to introduce our second speaker, Andre?
Next, we have Andre Fields. Andre is a founder and managing director. Interesting enough, Andrew is a father, and Andre, is the father of 4 children, but also has 4 degrees focusing on psychology. Psychologist studies emotional and cognitive
Cognitive.
cognitive behaviors to help improve progress and behaviors. Welcome, Andre.
Thank you, Ayana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andre Fields, and I'm here kind of representing myself, but also Grand Rapids Community College. I work there as an associate professor and a psychologist. I'm also an author of several books that relate to American racism and how it impacts the psychological functioning of various populations in this country. I'm also a founding director of a mentoring program for Black males. And over the years, most of my research has focused on, once again, the psychological impact of American racism. We all know American racism is a powerful force or a powerful energy in our culture. And whether you're Black or white or Hispanic or Asian, it's, at some point or another, it has an impact on some of our thinking, some of our emotions, and some of our behaviors. Um, I usually try to sum up my background pretty simply, and say I had a stereotypical African American experience, meaning I experienced a lot of the uh, struggles that a lot of Black Americans encounter in this country. When I say struggles, I mean poverty, fatherlessness, homelessness, violent neighborhoods, underfunded schooling systems, things like that. And so when you see a whole group of people having a certain negative life outcome, at some point as a psychologist, we're trained to ask, is it because this group of people are genetically inferior, or is there something wrong with the environment? And so, of course, I'm going to, I'm going to talk, and I'll talk about a little bit about this later, but, there are a lot of environmental challenges that Black people face because of systemic discrimination. And when I say systemic discrimination, I'm talking about the intentional taking away or withholding of access, resources, opportunities, things like that. And to me, we hear the word racism a lot, but the word discrimination to me is more important. What I have found is racism is basically, it's like a noun, or it's just a thought. It's a preconceived notion that you're superior than another person because of the color of their skin and the color of your skin. Discrimination is much more dangerous because now you're actually affecting other people's lives. So it's one thing to have a negative thought about a person, but once you begin to, again, take away their resources, their opportunities, their access, now you're complicating that individual's life as well as people who look like that individual, in this case, African Americans. And so a lot of times people say, why does systemic discrimination exist? If you look at all major sectors of society, systemic discrimination is there, whether it's in the education system, the financial system, criminal justice system, the healthcare system, housing, you name it. And so when people ask me, why does it exist so much? Why is it so insidious? The latest research I read or came across, 53% of white Americans admit to having an aversion towards Black Americans in this case. And so there are approximately about 225 million white Americans. If you take 53% of that number, there's about 115 million people in America, or white Americans, who say they have a disdain of sorts towards Black Americans. And so what happens is these 115 million people, they are the people who wake up, hit their alarms, and they go to work. They go to they put on their badges and their uniforms and they drive around, they profile Black people. They profile job applications in human resources. They give Black Americans higher interest rates for car loans, for home loans. They're more likely to reject Black people. So long story short, in every system, it's like you've got, let's say, just 7 sectors of society. Those 115 million people are somewhere within that system treating people unfairly. And so it's like a white tribalism is what I call it sometimes. And it's almost like a warfare of resources. And the purpose of that white tribalism is essentially white domination. And so when you live in a society where you're a minority and then you have a majority class who has, I guess, kind of, held the power in this country for generations, but then also have unfairly distributed resources, that produces a lot of psychological, I guess, taxation. And a lot of it has to do with race-related stress. When I say race-related stress, all that means is because of the color, it's the stress I experience because I feel like something can be taken away or withheld from me because of the color of my skin. And so with that race-related stress comes a lot of anxiety, depression, frustration, powerlessness, hopelessness, you name it. And so this is not only historical, this systemic discrimination, but it's modern day as well. You can just review statistics and you'll find, for example, white males are more likely to drive around with drugs and weapons in their car. Yet, disproportionately speaking, Black males are more likely to get pulled over. So that's just an example of how systemic discrimination makes it harder for some people and easier for others. And that's why in America, a lot of Black people would tell you that they have a love-hate relationship with this country. Most Black people want to be patriotic, but it's like you have a love-hate relationship with a parent who was abusive. Even though that parent was abusive, was unfair to you, you still love them. But sometimes you don't love them. And it's kind of, I always use this analogy of, I look at America as a parent. And she has 2 twins. She has a Black boy and a white boy. And so the Black boy, she doesn't treat so well. She doesn't affirm him. She doesn't nurture him. She tells him, why even try? You're never going to make it. You're going to be just like your loser uncle, etc. She tells her white child, you deserve to be a leader in this country. You have all the abilities and capabilities necessary to be successful. Just work hard and you'll get there. Then what that parent does, she sends those 2 little boys out into the world, and you can predict when they come back home, in the course of several years, you can predict who's more than likely to be successful. And then just like a bad parent, America does the same thing. It says, well, she tells her Black son, who you became and what you decided to do has nothing to do with the way I parented you, because I raised you in the same house as your brother. And so America, just like a bad parent, doesn't take responsibility for the fact that it hasn't been fair to its Black citizens. And so I like to call it white America's burden. And this is kind of white America's burden. White America has this cognitive dissonance that it deals with. It says on one hand, yep, racism exists. I know it's not fair, but you still should be able to thrive just as well as me in a superstructure that is strategically designed to hold you down. And so, what I would say in closing, when I think about what needs to take place and make things better, I try not to blame. Sometimes I blame the victim. Sometimes I blame the system. If you ask me whose fault it is or who is to be blamed for Black America's struggles socially, I'm going to blame American racism and systemic discrimination. At the same time, I'm going to hold Black America responsible for working and fighting to get out of that situation and improve their personal situations as a people. And so it's just like the parent. If you ask me whose fault is it that Mother America's Black son didn't do so well in life at the end, I'm going to blame the mother. But at the same time, I'm going to sit that Black boy down and say, look, I know life was messed up. You had a terrible parents, but you got to make it happen. And I'm going to try to support that person. And I think that's what I'm saying when I say I hold both responsible. You know, I blame the system, but I hold Black Americans responsible. So on that note, I'm done with my tangent.
That was awesome, Andre. I feel like you
Thank you.
provided a lot of knowledge and wisdom. I think Ayana has a question for you.
Since you was talking about this, I thought, have you ever been treated like this?
Oh yeah, plenty. Yeah. So it's just basic stuff. I can give you two vivid examples. So I live in East Grand Rapids, and I'll give you two examples. I've experienced it once, and my son did. So my son used to play baseball when he was in middle school, and we never really let him walk around the neighborhood because he's a taller guy, he's dark skinned, and so just one of the things we say, hey, we only let you out when we're with you. And so I don't know if you guys know about the coupon books that people sell for their teams. Well, the very first time we laid him out in the neighborhood to sell those booklets, someone called the police and they say he was trying to break in their house. So 3 state troopers surrounded him and made him prove that he lived on Cascade Road. And so he told me how scared he was. And he remember saying he felt like he was going to collapse. So for one, that's a very traumatic experience for a kid to have grown men with guns surrounding him. But two, it was a race-based situation. Myself, I've also had the same thing happen in my own neighborhood. Typically, this is my ex-wife, not to put my business out here, but she will always say, Andre, don't go out at night. One day we had a little argument. I decided to go out and take a walk, put on my headphones, and the exact same thing happened. State troopers converged on me and said that someone said I was looking in people's cars. I've been accused of stealing from stores. I've been literally pulled over and made to show a receipt. There's a notion that Black people have, or we're taught as Black people, that we have to do twice as much in order to keep up with the rest of society. And that's the Black person burden. I talked about the white American's burden, but the Black American burden is, in order for me to keep up with you, I have to be superior at something. White America is set up to where the average white man can end up having a good life. But in order for a Black male to even look average, he has to be superior, or he has to work doubly hard. And so I don't always share this in this type of platform, but if you know anything about working for a college, there's a process called being tenured. And so basically the way tenure works is, if you receive tenure, it's basically guaranteed employment. And it's basically you having to prove that you are an asset to the college. And so I was denied tenure. And so with that comes is the automatic termination of my position. However, because I worked so hard, the higher ups overturned it. And so one of them said if your portfolio wasn't as good as it was, there would have been nothing they could do to advocate for me. But because I've been working so hard over the years, that helped me. So what I would tell you, Ayana, is do your best. And you have to work hard. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in people. You have to believe in your future. And that'll get you through, because you're more than likely to experience racism, especially if you're going to be running for president one day. You're going to experience racism, and you can't let it disempower you, and you can't believe the lies. There's a lot of negative perspectives in society, but if you don't want to let those negative perspectives get inside your brain, so every day you have to talk positive to yourself, because again, you will experience racism running for president.
And I know who exactly is going to be just like that when I run for president, if he's still alive. Dr. Duckface.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Andre. We did have a couple other questions, but we're going to try to maybe revisit those a little bit. We've got time at the end. Thank you for sharing your story and all of those really very, very insightful facts. Ayana, would you like to introduce David?
Next, we have David. David works in education industry and has been a principal of West Ottawa Public Schools for 10 years. His most important job is raising a transracial family. I've learned that transracial families adopt children of a different race. We are excited to hear from you, David.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Ayana, I am seeing that I have some teachers watching this right now, and I'm wondering if they are trying to probably recruit you to get you into their classroom, because they would love to teach a future president. So thank you so much for doing this again this week. Obviously, if you're watching this right now, you know that I am not a Black man. So the story that I'm going to tell today is going to be very different from some of the other guests, because I've spent my entire adult life really benefiting from my white privilege. And so, as you already heard, I'm an elementary principal, and what I really strive to be is an educational leader. I strive to be an advocate for all 500 or so students in my building. But like you heard, my most important job is that of a father. I have 4 kids. Kingston and Kyrie are 9 years old. Ezra is 6, and my daughter Justice is 4. And we are a transracial family. We adopted Kingston and Kyrie from Ethiopia when they were about 5 months old. And what I want to talk about today, what I want to share today, is what it kind of means to me to be a white man who is a father of Black boys in America, and also in America at, this really kind of trying racial time. So I'll start a little bit with our adoption experience. One of the things that we learned in our adoption experience took about 2 years. And one of the things that we heard when we were adopting, when we had kind of focused in on the country of Ethiopia, is that for white parents looking to adopt, Black boys are not as desirable as other races or ethnicities. And that's, I think that's something that's really jarring. And when you hear it put that way, just, there's a lot to unpack there. Fast forward kind of 2 years, and because our adoption process took us 2 years, and my wife and I, we brought our boys home, and we slowly started to venture out into the world. And that's where we started to, as a family, experience some microaggressions. I remember walking around Target trying to do some shopping, and on multiple occasions, strangers would come up to us and tell us how cute our kids were, but they would also start essentially like petting their hair. We would have strangers come up to us and say, "Oh my gosh, your kids are so cute, but how do you ever tell them apart?" Our kids are not identical twins, and in fact, they don't actually look that much alike. So those are some of the first maybe microaggressions we experienced as a family. And as our kids were infants and toddlers, we really tried to make an effort to do our best as white parents to honor their culture, to honor their heritage. Grand Rapids is a great spot where there's 3 really good Ethiopian restaurants, Gojo's, Gersha, and Little Africa. And we would try to get there as much as possible to immerse ourselves in the culture. And in Ethiopia, communal eating is a very big thing. My wife and I are also both educators, and we know the importance of early literacy, but we also really know the importance of representation. And representation matters, and it matters at a very early age. So we made efforts to find picture books that had Black, boys as the main characters in TV shows and superheroes, because that representation really helps to build a strong foundation of self-identity. When it was time for our kids to get haircuts, we live in Holland, we found a Black-owned barbershop and immediately started getting our kids haircuts there. I get my haircut there, even though bald a little bit now, went there yesterday. So shout out to Q at Presidential Cuts. He's been cutting our hair for about 8 years, and that's just been a great family experience to do together. As our kids became school-aged, our neighborhood school is essentially an all-white school. It's a really good school, but we made the effort and the decision to send our kids to the elementary school that I'm the principal at, and that's a much more both racially and socially, economically diverse school, and that's been a really good experience for our kids. But we also we had to make these calculated decisions because we know that our kids face a barrier because their parents are white, and we don't have that same experience as other Black parents in raising Black kids. And so we've tried to make really strong efforts to do everything we can to set our kids up for success, and also to set them up to have really positive self-identities. Kingston and Kyrie, they're 9 years old right now. And like many 9-year-olds, they love to ride bikes, they fish, they play travel soccer, they play basketball, they're avid readers, they talk us into spending way too much money on Legos. But they're also about to enter this awkward stage in their life where they're going to go from, cute, fun-loving kids to Black boys that some people in society, some people maybe even in our neighborhood are going to see as a threat because of the color of their skin. And that's something as a parent that is anxiety inducing. As they get a little bit older, they're going to be strangers that aren't going to see Kyrie's years of perfect attendance, and they're not going to see Kingston's streak of all A's on his report card. They're really going to see Black kids who, I guess our country, our world has ingrained us to maybe at best be cautious of, and at worst feel hatred towards or threatened by. And, on May 25th of this year, like so many of you probably watching, I sat there and I watched an 8-minute and 46-second video of George Floyd being murdered. And that video, it hit me differently. And it's not that I wasn't aware of some of the systematic racism or discrimination or police brutality, the horrific scenes when you think of Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner. But for whatever reason, and probably because my kids are getting older now, this video really did hit me in a different way. I watched it and I felt angry. I felt sad. I felt disgusted. I think I felt embarrassed to be maybe an American at that moment, or a white man in America at that moment. But as a parent, I also felt this deep sense of fear and anxiety, because as parents, our number one job is to keep our kids safe. And over the course of that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I had this, maybe again, a sobering feeling, a sobering sense of, I'm not always going to be able to keep my kids safe. And that, that's all parents' goal. Shortly after that, I sat Kingston and Kyrie down, and I had the talk with them. And for maybe some white viewers watching right now, what that talk is I had the talk and I had the conversation with them about how to interact with police and what dangers they might face themselves when they interact with police that, I don't, as a white man, need to worry about. Talked a little bit about how they need to conduct themselves in public now as they're getting older. We talked about why we don't play with squirt guns out front or Nerf guns or sticks that look like guns. And as we have this conversation, Kingston, who is probably my more even-keeled son, just immediately started crying before we even got into like some of the specifics. And I think those tears, he came overwhelmed with the fact that, wrestling with the fact that there are going to be people in this world who are fearful of him, are hateful towards him because of the color of his skin. As a white man who's a father of black boys, some of the things I've learned is that I need to show up every day. I need to be ready to fight against racism and against injustice. I need to be able to recognize and name my privilege. And I really need to help Kingston and Kyrie continue to honor their heritage. I need to have tough conversations with them about racism and prejudice. Need to be more outspoken on social media when we have extended family posting ridiculous memes and things that aren't true or that are hurtful. And really what I need to do is I need to do everything I can to equip Kingston and Kyrie to enter into a world in which the system, in which the structure makes it impossible for them to have the same starting point as their younger brother, Ezra. So I guess if you're watching this, and I know my time's about to come to an end, so if you're watching this, I really would encourage you, especially white viewers right now, to listen to our black brothers and sisters, listen to our black friends, hear their stories, hear their struggles, and validate them, and find ways to walk alongside of them. We all need to be allies. And we also need to do the work of being anti-racist. Been working through some literature and some books recently. And in the book, So You Want to Talk About Race, the author states that anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, even if that's in yourself, because that's the only way forward. And so one of the things that I've been wrestling with and talking about is, and this is what I guess I'll leave you with, racism really, to me, isn't a black problem. It's a white problem. And so for all the white allies tuning in right now, I want to just challenge you to show up every day to fight that racism wherever you find it, because my kids, the panelists here, all black, brown people deserve that. They deserve us to fight for them. So, all lives truly can matter. And before all lives can matter, black lives need to matter. So, thanks for your time today. It's an honor to be a part of this, and excited to continue to learn from the rest of you today.
Thank you so much, David. I found myself getting emotional. That was good. Ayana, did you have a question for him?
Yes. Have your kids ever came home saying that they were mistreated by other kids at school?
For sure. And sometimes I think it's been because of their race, and sometimes it's just because, I saw that you do some work on anti-bullying. But, just this year, my kids are going into 4th grade. And so just this year, my son, Kingston, had the experience of the N-word being used, not necessarily directly towards him, but on the playground. And, I'm the principal at the school, so he came right into my office and we had to have that conversation kind of on the fly. And unfortunately, that's something that they've already faced at, the age of 9, and they're going to continue to face. And I guess my job is to continue to empower them to know how to respond in those situations.
Thanks, David. We really appreciate that. Ayana, would you like to introduce our 4th speaker, Amar?
Now we have Amar Butler. Amar describes himself as as people-oriented, which means he loves working with and helping people. He currently is managing partner of My Life Sport and Social Club. Sports are important because they help people work together as a team. Sports are not only good for you, they are fun too. Welcome, Amar.
Thank you for the introduction, Ayana. Miss President. I encourage you to use Twitter responsibly when you become president. And I also want to thank Mixed Staffing for creating this platform for people to feel comfortable and be able to speak to their experiences and just share their stories. So thank you to the Mixed staff as well. Just quickly, a little bit about me. Again, my name is Amar, and I wanted to just very quickly touch on my name and where it comes from for people that don't know me. So I'm named after my Aunt Emma. She was kind of our family matriarch. She kind of handled everything pertaining to my mom's side of the family, and she was unable to have children. So my parents just put 2 R's on the end of Emma. And that's where I got my name from, and it's something I'm extraordinarily proud of. And she was an incredible person, and hopefully I can measure up a little bit to what my aunt was able to accomplish while she was here. And the subject I want to talk about today is going to be personal wellness and just kind of finding peace in such a difficult time in American history and world history, really. So again, my name's Amar. I grew up in a small town, South Haven, Michigan. It's right on the coast of Lake Michigan. With where I grew up, there's a decent amount of diversity, whether it come from we had a large Latino segment that would come in the summer times and help pick the blueberries in the area. And with that, I learned very early on to kind of accept people for who they are and not treat anyone differently because of their race or how they looked or anything like that. Within my immediate family as well, I have members of the LGBTQ community, and in my extended family, my family looks like a pretty big hodgepodge of people. There's lots of different races, different sexual orientations. So I really learned early on just to treat people well and accept and celebrate diversity. And within that, within my family, I also have members of my family that are in law enforcement. And while I was being introduced, at the bottom of my photo, it said, "He is George Floyd." And that's still really, really powerful for me to read, all this time later, because I feel like a lot of us, well, hopefully everyone knows his name now, but a lot of us are familiar with these names that have been in the media recently, whether it be George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery, or I could go on and on. But for me, the first name that comes to mind when I think about police brutality and how it affected me would be Rodney King, because there was a video of him being beaten by police officers that came out in the 90s. So that was kind of my initial awakening to police brutality, and just kind of dealing with it in the sense of I was brought up to trust law enforcement and understand that they're people that are hired to protect and serve us. And that was kind of my first experience, just realizing that, hey, they make mistakes too. And there are problems within their organization as well. So when I initially learned of what happened to George Floyd, my first response was to, or I should say my defense mechanism was to just kind of put it off. I kind of ignored it because, like I said, I've experienced or excuse me, not personally, but you know, I've been familiar with police brutality my whole life. So just as a way to protect myself from getting upset about seeing George Floyd's murder, I just chose to put it off. But that you know, that has a shelf life. You can't ignore things like that. And fortunately, our country, given our situation with COVID-19, the world situation with COVID-19, I think we all had to handle this George Floyd thing, and we all had to watch him being murdered. And like David touched on earlier, hearing about police brutality is one thing, but seeing it makes it very real. You know, and you know, unfortunately, to this day, I still haven't been able to watch the George Floyd video, and I don't think I'll ever be able to, just with the trauma associated with that. But you know, his death made everyone kind of deal with this thing. So when I finally did process it, that kind of allowed my emotional floodgates to be opened. You know, I spent a lot of time being angry, frustrated, spent a lot of time being, you know, feeling heartbroken about everything that was happening. I wasn't sleeping well. It started to manifest in a lot of different ways. So, excuse me. Just dealing with all those emotions and trying to find a way to process things and to be okay. In the midst of all this, I fortunately had some friends that got engaged. So with their engagement, they invited me up north to come spend a little bit of time with them. And this was the same week that we had the riots here in Grand Rapids. We had a peaceful protest that Chief Payne took part in. And as that was occurring, I felt really, despite all the hurt I was feeling, I was feeling really encouraged. And I felt like I wanted to remain a part of the movement that we had going on. So a little bit of what I was feeling was guilt from just going and spending time with my friends and celebrating their engagement. I felt a little bit guilty just trying to find some joy in such a difficult time. And fortunately, I have some great friends. I have some great family. And my best friend said, and this really stuck out to me. He said, "The struggle will still be here when you get back." And when he said that, it kind of allowed me to explore being able to find wellness in this difficult time. So I was able to go up north with my friends. Just the four of us initially. We just got to spend time talking to each other, laughing, crying, and I thought it was really important to spend time with loved ones. Some of the things I was also able to do, we got to exercise together. That was very fulfilling. We went hiking, we went kayaking. You know, just finding things that you know made me happy, that were fulfilling to myself, that I was doing with others. But I also am grateful for my friends that they allowed me some time to just do something by myself. So they let me go off, and that's kind of what I want to speak to today. It's great to find personal, or excuse me, it's great to do activities with friends and family members that are fulfilling and invigorating. But I think it's important that all of us be able to find some personal wellness and carve out time for yourself and do activities that don't necessarily involve anyone else. For me, it was, I spent a little bit of time meditating. I spent a little bit of time listening to music by myself. I spent a little bit of time reading scriptures, reading books. And I understand that that not everyone has that type of time every day to to carve out, a lot of time for themselves. But I think it's very important that even if it's 5 minutes, just find something that you personally like to do that doesn't involve anyone else, that's fulfilling to yourself. Because I think it's difficult to fulfill others if you yourself are empty. So I'll end things by saying, allow some grace for yourself. Find your personal peace, whatever that may be. And if you're in a position, offer that peace to others.
Thank you, Amar. We really appreciate that. A question that came in is, as a managing partner of a business, what steps are you taking to make sure diversity is included in what you do?
That is a great question. So one part of that, a major part of that, I'm very proud of the organization I work with, My Life Sport and Social Club. I'm actually wearing our season's T-shirts, and it's backwards, but it says equality, and that's that. Fortunately, that comes from leadership. It was important to us that, within our leagues, diversity is just kind of built in because, as Ayana touched on earlier, sports are a great thing to help bring people together. And specifically within our organization, we want to be welcoming to all people. It's important to us that all people are not only represented, but feel comfortable when they're playing sports in our leagues. And and on top of trying to remain responsible and do everything we can do COVID-19 related to help keep our players safe, it's a big deal to us that everyone is seen and treated as equals, and diversity is respected and celebrated within our community and within our organization.
Very good. Thanks, Amar. We appreciate that. Ayana, would you like to introduce our final speaker, Mr. Andre Pillow?
Yes. Lastly, we have Andre Philo. Philo. Is it Philo or Pillow?
Pillow, just like you sleep on.
Sorry, Andre Pillow.
Okay.
Andre Pillow is the founder of DNA Golf Instruction. His golf is to teach the sport of golf to everyone around the world. Golfing can be hard to master because of the obstacles, but it is fun and it's age-friendly, and it is an age-friendly sport to everyone. We're excited to hear from you today, Andre.
Well, thank you, Ayana, and I am very, very proud of you. I have 3 young daughters, 8, 5, and 2, and you're hopefully going to be a role model for them. And one thing about our industry, as we talk about golf, I am a PGA professional, and we recently had our first woman president in our last election. So Susie Whaley is our first woman president, and she told me that she wants me to be the first African-American president of the PGA. So I have a lot of pressure, and today that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about being leaders and not being followers. It's very important that we work as a group, but that we're individuals and we try our best to do what we can to succeed and make a better world. As you mentioned earlier, I am the founder of DNA Golf Instruction, a golf instruction company based at 2 different golf courses here in Michigan. Blythefield Country Club, which is the home of the LPGA Meyer Classic, a private facility, and I also operate at Indian Trails Golf Course in the city of Grand Rapids, real close to Ottawa Hills there, David. And I know some of your educators and have worked with some of your students. Our company mission is to teach the game of golf to everyone, no matter your background or income level. We want our students to discover natural ability and enjoy the game in a manner that suits them. My individual focus is on targeting minorities, women, and juniors, those people that golf tends to forget about, focusing more on our white male counterpart there. at the private level, even at the public level as well. So with that focus for me, it's very important that I teach golf to everyone at every price level. So I have a high-end rate, I have a middle-class rate at Indian Trails, and currently I am teaching 4 young girls at Indian Trails for free at no cost to them. Something that I can do, give them the knowledge of the game. And the reason I love my sport so much is an individual sport, and it mirrors life. Everyone has a different skill set, a different starting point. Sometimes you get lucky in life, sometimes you get lucky in golf. Some people work hard in life, some people work hard in golf. So a lot of the things that we see in life are emulated in the sense that we don't have teammates, our decisions are our decisions, our successes are our successes, and our failures are also our failures. And I really like that, especially for young people that are trying to learn about themselves, especially in a tough environment like what we're dealing with now. As many of you know, there's not a lot of Black African-American golf professionals in my business. The 28,000 plus PGA professionals, I'm probably represented by less than 2% as an African-American male. My goal is to change that. And I think with my upbringing and things that have happened in my life, I'm finally in that position of trusting myself as an individual to make the things happen that I need to for the community and do things on a national level. I'm from Lansing originally, went to Lansing Sexton High School, a product of public schools. My mother was an educator in the public school system. And I bet you're wondering, why golf? I grew up playing everything. Was a good basketball player, fastest kid in my neighborhood, probably up until the 6th grade. Some of you guys might argue with me about that. But played every sport that you can think of. But for me, in some reason, golf was a little different. I had time with my father on that golf course, and I learned about myself more in playing golf than I did in any other sport. So when it came time for me to get to high school, and all of my friends that are expecting me to play football, they see me walk in this school with these golf clubs. It was nerve-wracking, and they were wondering, what is this funny sport, this white sport that we see Andre playing, that he won't even play football, he's gonna play this. So it was a tough transition going into high school, but I had a mother and father that taught me to think for myself and to be an individual in every situation, and I knew I wanted to play golf. The funny thing was, after my freshman year, of those people making fun of me and being almost scared to bring my golf clubs to school, I started getting support. The more times my name was mentioned on announcements, those same people that were making fun of me started supporting me. They started empowering me, and they started letting me be who I wanted to be in the first place. So golf taught me that. It taught me to be myself, and the successes I had in golf led me in a certain direction. I am the child of an educator. My mother had her PhD in child psychology, and she taught me to think for myself, to not follow the crowd. And right now we do have crowds that are moving in some positive directions, but I want to remind those people in those groups and in those crowds that you can still do things as an individual to push an agenda and to make things better. Very, very important. And I thank my mother for that. She passed away about 6 years ago when my oldest child was only 2, and something came from that was positive. I saw a leader in my mother, but when she was gone, it was time for me to step up and be a leader as well, to do the things in the community that I saw and to help and support those that need help and guidance. And I'm doing it through golf, not through education like my mother did. But it's still helping, and I'm still using my skill set to go a certain direction. My company is gaining traction here in town and also nationally with 3 videos on PGA.com. And my goal is to take the community with me. As I mentioned before, I'm teaching 4 kids for free right now. I'm hoping to double that by the end of the year. Without COVID, I was hoping to have up to 12 kids. And I don't mean just exposing them. My goal is to give them everything that the private club junior golfer would have in relation to clubs, equipment, and time and energy so that I can empower that child to be whatever they want to be. That is the gift of golf. And if we have people around the game, people that can support efforts, we can create change. Our kids are special, our kids are talented, our kids are underexposed to things that can change their life. And my job is to expose them to those things that I think are important. There's a famous W.E.B. Du Bois quote that mentions, by being your greatest, you teach others how to be great. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to show people how to be great, put my best foot forward, and hopefully others can follow suit. And we see that in sports. We see that with relationships. And one thing that I wanted to mention as we wrap up here, like I said, be an individual, right? Don't follow the crowd or do things based on what the crowd says to do. One of my best friends from college, Ken Jordan, great friend. And we have, arguments about certain things. And one of those arguments we have is about traditional colleges versus HBCUs. We met each other at Tennessee State University, but to this day we have arguments about the environment. He thought the environment was a great environment, the camaraderie was great, and he felt better learning in that environment. But for me, I felt like we weren't really competing in what I consider to be the real world, and I could see the differences between some of the higher end universities and our universities. So we have this debate, we have these arguments. Best friend, right? Very smart. I trust his opinion, and we disagree on those things. I'm bringing that up to say that those thoughts, those differences in opinions, they all come from the same trauma. They all come from the same history, the civil rights battles that we fought, the slavery that we both have in our past. So we all have ideas that stem from the same stuff, the same trauma as Dr. Andre mentioned early on. And I want to identify that. Maybe we should move as individuals. Maybe we should try to do more as individuals and work harder to reach an individual goal. Maybe instead of getting involved, and even as an example, voting, maybe you should run for a local office. So I want to encourage everyone to be an individual. The sport of golf taught me to be an individual, and I'm using that as my tool to teach other kids how great they can be. They can be great just like any other kid. As long as they put the effort forward to do so, we can succeed as a group.
That was awesome. You left me feeling inspired, so thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
I've got one question from the attendees, and then I think Ayana had a question real quick. What is it like being a Black man in the golf world, and do you often feel disconnected? So I guess it could say, like, other people who might feel being a minority in any environment, how do you get connected?
Correct. Well, and yes, and you hit it on and just how we talk about the nation and not feeling part of the nation, kind of like we have a bad parent. I feel that way about my organization as a PGA professional. I think that we finally learned, and from the leadership, they're creating programs, which I'm a part of, to create more diversity and inclusion. And I'm in the room. So what I would tell you, yes, it's tough. What I will tell you, have I had barriers in front of me? Yes. But I'm not afraid to fight those barriers. And once again, I'm not going to wait for the group to say it's okay. And this is one other thing in relation to that that's very important. As I say, being an individual versus following the crowd. And I don't mean to downplay anything that all, Black Lives Matter is doing. And I think it's a wonderful organization. But I tell people that I'm around to be like Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman wasn't waiting for anybody to tell her what to do. Harriet did what she needed to do with the people that she needed to do it with to make change happen. I'm like Harriet Tubman in relation to what I'm doing in the golf business. I'm setting my own tone. I'm creating my own environment. I'm working with minorities here in town and on a national level, helping kids via virtual golf lessons in South Carolina, Ohio, wherever I can find a way to help, I'm doing it, just like Harriet Tubman. So that's what I will tell you. Be a part of the group, but remember to be an individual and use your brain to figure out what change you can make immediately. And that's what I'm doing in my industry. And now they're looking at me even from a section level as being a leader, potentially joining the board and doing some things on a national scale as well. So just remember to be like Harriet Tubman and we'll be all right.
Awesome. Ayana, what was the question that you had?
Okay, your friends, when you were younger and you started golf, did they make fun of you because you wanted to do golf?
Some of them did, yes. And that's the thing about friends. Friends can joke around a little bit and it's okay. But did it stop me from wanting to play? No. And this is where we get back to what we need to do for our youth. I love the organizations that work with youth. But I feel like I don't want our children to be afraid. I don't want them to be afraid to succeed. I don't want them to be afraid to fail. When you were a baby, Ayana, you fell on your face 1,000 times before you learned how to walk. As soon as you learned how to walk, you know what you tried to do immediately? You tried to run. And you started the process all over again. So let's not be afraid to fail. Let's put our best foot forward, and let's really try to be there for our kids in relation to mentoring them and giving them an opportunity.
Very good. Thank you, Andre. We appreciate that. We'd like to go into closing remarks and closing statements, calls for change. If we can go in the order of which we started, we'll start with you, Javar. Go to Andre, David, Amar, and then Andre again.
There
There
I
we
go. You say closing statements? Like,
Yes, what would you like to leave this conversation? What would you hope people have gotten from this conversation today?
what would I hope people got from this conversation? That's a pretty tough question.
We can come back to it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Andre, are you good with going second?
Yes, I can jump in there. I kind of already said this, but I think it's important for blacks and whites and all races to take responsibility for their individual progress, kind of like what Andre was speaking on. So, because we need to progress as a collective group, but we also need to have our individual goals. This is something I've been working on and thinking about, and working with a group of guys. If you ever read the book of Exodus, it's a story in the Bible where God sent Moses to take the people out of Egypt. And I strongly believe that Black Americans need to escape their oppressor or leave their oppressor, meaning we need our own communities. We need our own economy. We need to make and create jobs. And I feel like until we can have our own community and nurture ourselves, we're going to always be fighting against discrimination. White people have their own communities. East Grand Rapids is a white community. Ada is a white community. And so there's nothing wrong with getting with your people and empowering one another, and making sure that discrimination is like, here's an example. When I walk on the street at night around my neighborhood, I'm not worrying about muggers, robbers, rapers, killers. I'm literally worried about coming across the police. And that's an example of not having your own community. And so what I would tell Black people to think about is us becoming more engaged, more united, more supportive, and more strategic about creating our own community. And with that being said, those are my closing words.
Do you want me to just jump right in next?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, awesome. I think my closing words, as an educator, I think there's so much power still in learning, in whether you are 9 years old or 90 years old, continuing to listen to stories and listen to people that are different from you and learning from those experiences. And like I said earlier, I think one of the things that when we listen, we really need to hear and validate and not necessarily always respond. And then I guess the last thing I want to say is, I didn't touch on too much as my job as a principal, but in all schools, there is a great need for volunteers to come in and mentor kids who are struggling, who have home lives that might look more challenging than others. So if you're looking for things to do, reach out to local school districts, local elementary schools, and step up and volunteer and mentor. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, David. Amar?
Yeah, just really quickly, I came across a quote the other day, and I really loved it, and I wanted to share this with everyone. It said, "Be forgiving of your past self, be firm with your present self, and be flexible with your future self." And that was huge for me. And as it relates to personal wellness, and given the climate that we're in America right now, if you haven't done very much right now to contribute to the change that you'd like to see, to to Black Lives Matter, to all the movements that are occurring in America today. That's okay. But my call to action would be the time to do nothing is over. Not everyone needs to be on the front lines, with speaking or using Facebook to or any platform they have. Not everyone is built to be on the front lines, but you have to find some way to contribute. Reach out to people you trust. Be honest with yourself about your feelings and emotions, and if you encounter something within yourself that you don't necessarily like, as I mentioned, be firm with yourself, but be flexible with your future self. So I'll leave it with that. Just make sure you're doing what you can to spread love and being a part of the change you'd like to see.
Awesome. Javar, I see you unmuted yourself. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Make sure you speak up.
Okay, yeah. My closing remarks will be, let's, as a people, let's take a look at reforming people when they get out of prison. I mean, people go to prison, they get out, and it's just like they still in prison.
Mm.
There's no direction when you get out of prison. And a lot of that is mental health. I mean, you got people that say, well, you went to prison, you did your time, you can get out and get a job, but mental health plays a big part in that. And that's something that's not being looked at when people get out of prison, the resources to actually help people.
Very good. Thank you. And then we're gonna close with Andre, and then we're gonna have we have an intern through the city of Grand Rapids started through all this going on with George Floyd. They had a youth internship program, so we have Victor with us too, and he was going to close on something, and that's with employers in the area hiring 1,000 inner city youth. So we're grateful to have him here too.
Okay, it's on me? Perfect. So I guess I'll leave you with this. As I mentioned before, my mother was an influence on me, having her PhD and raising me a certain way to think a certain way. And I want to remind everybody that we come from greatness. If you can even look at the time, slavery to now, in the inventions, the traffic light, the high heel shoe, the Charles Drew with the blood transfusion. We can mark all of the things that our people have done in times when they did not have the freedoms that we have now. So as bad as it is now, I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening to this to do something to be great. If you are great, someone else will see that and they will become great. That is the only thing that we have to do as a group, is be great and show people what it looks like. Awesome.
Thank you, Andre. And then Victor, did you have closing remarks, and Courtney as well? And then Ayana, looks like you're going to close us out, right? All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Howdy. I'm a first-generation college student at the University of Michigan, and I'm so grateful to be here and have this opportunity to expand my scope of what career paths are out there. I wanted to quickly go over what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. So diversity is a representation of all our varied identities and differences, collectively and as individuals. We must seek to proactively engage, understand, and draw on a variety of perspectives. Equity. Equity seeks to ensure fair treatment, equality of opportunity, and fairness and access to information and resources for all. We must believe this is the only possible in an environment built on respect and dignity. Inclusion. Inclusion builds a culture of belonging by actively inviting the contribution and participation of all people. We must believe every person's voice adds value. We must strive to create balance in the face of power differences. We believe that no one person can or should be called upon to represent an entire community. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Beautiful. All right, Ayana, and then Courtney is going to close us out. Any closing remarks, Ayana?
Sorry. Sorry, wrong tune. My bad. Thank you so much for being here with us and for all of your time to listen to these amazing stories. We are grateful for all of the speakers and listeners. Now I think it's time we all open our ears, eyes, and hearts and begin to change. Do it!
All right, that's awesome. Thank you to all the speakers for being here. Thank you to the people that are listening and tuning in. We want to invite anybody who wants to continue these discussions to reach out to Courtney or myself or one of our team members, and we will do our best to come into organizations and companies and train and educate people on diversity and the importance of everything that comes with DEI and making change. So thank you guys. Courtney, anything?
Yeah, no, thank you all. I've seen many people who've been here almost every single week with us, and we're just, again, grateful that you're here to join us at the table. And again, I just want to close with you guys taking action. I feel like go on our Facebook page and go back and watch every single webinar if you have not already. And I've heard the consistent stories and the consistencies that many people have had in each week, and just find those and see what you can do to help and take action. We have so much knowledge and wisdom in our very own community, but we need those actions too, and we really depend on your support to help make this change in our community. So thank you all for being here. And I'm excited to see how this grows in the future. And again, like Sarah said, if you want to know how you can be a part of this, just message myself or Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend and try to stay cool. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Linda.